Welcome back as we continue on the spiral staircase build. Here's what it looked like when we left last time. I did a little bit of sanding since then. We're going to continue on that first thing today. And by the end of the project today, we'll be fastening the stairs in, gluing them in, and I want to show you how I'm doing all this. First, we need to get a couple of these treads off. We'll continue sanding a bit. I'm going to be using my angle grinder for this with a flap wheel on it. I found that to be the best sander that I can use on a project like this. It works really fast and it does a really nice job. So we're going to get started with the treads. We're going to clean the surface of this off, the back, and round the edges, taper them a little bit, and make it look like a stair tread. We're going to use an angle grinder, a belt sander where we can, a little bit to clean it up, and I'm going to use a planer on a couple of these. That all depends on the width. If it's under 12 inches, I can use a planer. If not, I've got to use the other stuff. So this one here is over 12 inches. So we're going to use the grinder on with the flap disc. So this is what the flap disc looks like. It's a bunch of little pieces of sandpaper that spin on that disc. This one here may show you a little bit closer what it looks like new. Well, let's get started cleaning this up. This isn't a real fast project. In the stair build here, by the end of this video, I have about 40 hours into it. But I must say, it's a very gratifying experience taking these trees and making them into something that will last a lifetime for me and my family. One thing I want to do is I want to shape these stairs. I don't want to leave them square. I want to put some angles on them, soften the corners as I sand them. This should give a much better appearance. Well, it would really help if I plugged it in, wouldn't it? So as I'm sanding this, I'm not taking out all of it to make it smooth. I'm leaving a little bit of the roughness from the saw marks to give it a little bit of character. I feel very important in a build like this. Then there's this scenario where I have this board that measures under 12 inches, just a little bit shy. So I'm going to use the planer to help speed up the process in this by making multiple passes through the planer to take off just a little bit at a time. It's going to make most of the board smooth, but as long as I don't take off too much, it won't make it completely smooth. It will still leave a little bit of the chatter marks left by the bandsaw. And here's kind of what it looks like after I get done running it through. Got a little bit of those marks left still, but it's shaping up quite nicely. Got a few of the treads in. I've got most of it sanded at this point. Almost up to the top. Just a little bit farther to go as far as that goes. But again, it's looking good. Got everything cut to length. Everything's fitting nicely. And here's a look from underneath. I think it really looks good at this point. So, time to get started on cutting some tendons to tie this all together. Now, I've had a lot of comments about whether or not it would hold a person with the weight, and I would completely agree. At this point, no, it wouldn't. But at this point, we're also grading the test way before we're done taking it. So one of the structural components of this build is going to be to tie the outside all together and to give it some rigidity. Even at the end of this video, I don't feel that it will be 100% yet, because even the handrail is going to add strength to this project. But as we continue on the project, it's going to get stronger and stronger, as you'll be able to see. So the first part of this is I'm going to cut them to length, and I'm going to strip the bark off of them. I just went to my firewood pile for this to find some nice pieces about 2.5 inches in diameter that I'm going to use to make these tendons to tie the back of every tread to the front of every tread above it. Now I am heating this area today, being that it's about 40 degrees outside and the glue's got to be about 45 in order to work. There's also been a few comments about there being holes in the siding, and yes, this is work in progress. I'm going to put on the battens probably in the summer to close this in a little bit more. But for now, we're going to use the turbo heater to keep this area a little bit warmer, along with the fireplace, keeping it warm in here. Again, we're going to use a flap disc to clean up these logs, to get all that little membrane material off that's underneath of the bark. After sanding each piece, I'm going to clamp it down and use the tenon cutter to cut the tenons on each end of the log, carefully measuring to get the right height for every stair. Didn't get it right on the first try every time, but with a couple trial and errors, I was able to get it. Okay, at the first step, I'm going to make a base. That way it supports the end of the first step, which is going to help to carry the rest of the steps. I'm going to use the fastener bit that we used in the last video, along with my drill and my drill depth guide, which I just set up. This will be the base that I'm going to drill a hole on each side of, 1 inch deep, using my depth gauge to receive the tenons. We're going to be using the same process in the bottom stair tread, marking our holes equally apart and drilling those same 1 inch holes. So the goal here is for each tread to be 7 7/16 tall. Time to start gluing up the first step. Exciting. I'm going to start by using appropriate amounts of glue. I want to make sure that there's a good adhesion to each piece to each other. Using this, I'm going to use a paintbrush and spread it evenly. And then as I install the tenons, I'm going to twist them a little bit to make sure that everything's glued properly. In addition to the glue, I'm also going to be using mechanical fasteners that we're going to try to hide as much as possible throughout this project. For the base, I'm going to be using a trim screw because there won't be any weight pulling down on it and it won't need a big head. After gluing and screwing, I'm going to clean off the glue that's squeezed out from the joints. We're going to use the same process on the tenon going in to the center post of the stair tread. We're going to make sure there's plenty of glue. We want to make sure that every piece that's connected is glued properly. I'm also going to use some construction lags on the underside of this stair tread to screw into the center post, which I'll be showing you here in just a little bit. One other important thing is that there's a little bit of slop in my joints. I didn't intend it that way, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So if I do have a little bit of slop, I'm using a shim to take that out. That will help to ensure that the stairs don't wiggle and loosen over time. As I said earlier, we're going to be using a construction lag. This one here is 5 inches long. It's got a nice big head on it, and we'll screw in and hold that tight up against the center post from underneath. After carefully gluing and installing the shims, I trim back the excess with my utility knife. Well, the first one's done. Only about a dozen more to go. So to connect the first tread to the second tread, I'm going to use the line laser again, as I've used earlier in this project, to mark the holes so they will be plumb to one another. We're going to be using the same process of drilling the holes and using a tenon to connect both the bottom and the top step. We're going to continue the same process for every step. On the next step, I'm going to change the process just a little bit though. I'm going to use this construction lag to hold together the tenon in addition to the glue, because I want to have the bigger head because there'll be downward pressure on the back of the second tread. I'm also going to use this plug that I cut to hide the holes that I'm using for these screws. Here's a plug cutter that I'm using to make these with. I'm just using a piece of scrap board, plug cutter, and drilling down in. And here's what the plug looks like after it's glued and sanded. If you're not looking for it, you're probably not going to see it. So we continue with the steps, step by step, as I've shown. And they're really starting to take shape at this point. Now we're over by the wall. I'm using the wall to actually anchor these steps as well, screwing them into the blocks down below, which is adding a great deal of rigidity to these steps and strength. Now, as I've got almost all the steps up, except for the landing up top, I'm taking the time to sand down the rest of the plugs. As you can see, this has added a great deal of strength to these, that it can hold my 220 pounds. But again, this is still a work in progress and ever evolving. We're going to be adding handrail in the next part of this series, which will increase the strength even more. So here's what it's looking like so far. So in the next part, we're going to be adding handrail, a landing up top, and reconfiguring the framing. I hope you enjoyed this part of my journey. I think these stairs are shaping up quite nicely, and I'm very impressed with them myself. I think they're going to add a great focal point to my man cave here. Well, I'll see you next time. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. Tell me what you think. If you have any more ideas, let me know. I'm always interested in what you think. Thanks for watching.